Other Capital Ideas. I'm Sandy Behan, and our guest this week is the Mayor of Norman, Dr. Bill Nations. Welcome back.
Thank you, Sandy.
It's good to have you. It's been almost a year since you were here. What kinds of things have happened in Norman in the past year?
Norman has, it's a very busy place in terms of economic development, and that puts a lot of responsibilities on city government. We've been working on finishing capital projects that were voted by the citizens 5 years ago. We've been, in fact, we have like 3 or 4 capital projects that were voted in the last few years, including water, fresh water, and streets, and so it's a very busy place at City Hall.
Very busy place. Let's talk about one of the, as you call it, capital and economic improvements, if you will, and that is the plan to build an Albertsons on the east side of town at the corner of Lindsay and 12th. Is that correct?
That's correct, and gee, it's a long sought-after event by everyone involved. Council Member Henderson and all the council members from that side of town, and the mayor and the city manager have wanted and encouraged economic development on the east side of town, but somehow it's hard to convince the investors. But there is an apartment there that had some financial difficulty, and because of the loan situation and who the players were able to put together, not City Hall, but the investors, and we're able to put together a financial package that makes that work. And so finally and at last we're going to get some kind of positive economic development in the form of an Albertsons on the east side, and we're all excited about it.
Is there any prospects, I guess, out there that this will be the first of several?
Well, you hope so. I mean, I hope so. Everybody wants something to happen with the old Heisman Square, and we want positive things out there. So this is kind of the first step, and we hope that it leads to others. No way for us to know that.
Now, in the past, when we've talked about that, the answer to the question was always, well, if you have the highway, I-35 is always the drawing card for why so many businesses locate in that area as opposed to the east side. But I think the city manager was here in December or early January, and we talked about all the new housing starts on the east side. Will this then promote more development economically, or should it promote more development?
Well, I hope so. You know, another thing that's happening, it's a little ways off, but you want to be a visionary. There's always been an Oklahoma City metro area master plan for transportation, and a loop, an outer loop, if you will, around Oklahoma City. And just where that loop goes, the south end of that loop, is not set in concrete. It might be Tecumseh Road. It might be Highway 9. If it were Highway 9, then there would be an east section to that loop that would run through pretty much the middle of the east part of Norman. If it's Tecumseh Road, there would not be that connection, but there still would be a very important Tecumseh Road loop sort of on the north side of the east side of Norman. So those kinds of projects will bring a lot more traffic flow and be a lot more attractive to businesses that think that traffic flow is important, like the businesses that are attracted to I-35. So that master plan includes some improved transportation routes that will involve the east side, and that's a ways off. But yeah, there are economic development in terms of houses out there. And of course, we just finished the 2020 plan and adopted, depending on how you view this, what we hope is a really good master plan for rural East Norman to ensure that we have quality type of development out there, type of development that we hope that citizens of Norman would like to see out there, and the people who live there currently would like to have out there. Some would say that a 1 house and 10 acres and then cluster, if you will, so you could put houses on half-acre tracts, but you'd have to have the other 9.5 acres dedicated to open space and that sort of thing, would produce a quality area out there and encourage development and the more people that live out there. The common phrase is that retailers count rooftops.
Retailers count rooftops.
Yes, they do. The two primary things they do is if there's a highway, they count the number of cars that go by. And the second thing they do is count rooftops.
Okay, so when you take something like an Albertsons and you displace an entire apartment complex, where do those people go?
Well, that was part of the controversy because it was low-income housing, and so we're all in the process of finding alternative locations for that low-income housing. And obviously none of us want to lose low-income housing. We need to have places for those kinds of folks, so we're trying to find an alternative to that. But there's always upsides and downsides to any situation, and that was kind of a downside to that, but we're trying to find alternatives for that.
Okay. One of the changes that occurred over the past year was the dynamics of City Council, because you were talking before the show about the addition of, 5 new members to the council?
Yeah, in the last year, I've been down there 11 years now, and in the 11 years that I've been there, during the last 12 months, we've had the greatest turnover of council members that I believe I've experienced in a 12-month period, in that there are 9 members, of course, and 5 are new within the year. 3 are new within the month, and then 2 others have only been there a year. So we have 5 really very new council members, and in any situation like this, whether it's a state legislature or the national government, whatever, I mean, it takes practically a year for anybody just to find the hallways,
Get up to speed.
So it takes a while. Well, we kind of got, at least we thought that since we had so many new council members, that we might take a little different approach than we've taken in the past, times when we may have only had 1 new council member or maybe 2 new council members, but that we needed to get these council members together with each other and get them together with staff and do orientation sessions and tours of facilities, and especially probably some team building projects. And in public education, I know how familiar you are with that, but some types of projects that get council members together with staff members and give them exercises about how to interact with each other and who's on first and what everybody's talents and strengths are. So I think we're having one of those all day on May the 9th, I think out at the Postal Training Center. So we're sort of trying to rebuild our team, I guess, with a lot of new members.
Do you sense a change in focus with the new members? I mean, the 5 out of 9 is a majority, if you will.
There are new perspectives, very strong ones. I can cite just a couple, and the hospital issue would point out 2 strong perspectives. Council member Harrelson is a physician at the hospital of 1-year tenure, and he is a very strong advocate in support of the community hospital. Council member Shove is brand new and is at the university, a prof, and is by training a city planner and economic developer. He had concerns about the legalities and what the process was, and so these guys are both very strong, and they both bring strong opinions to the council, and they were different opinions. So yes, we do. We have a new council member from Ward 5, Lester Vaughn, who's, I think, if not completely, a near lifelong resident of that area. And I think that he will be a very strong advocate for that ward and a person who has a lot of experience out there. I appointed him to ACOG, Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, as an alternate representative so he could interact with the state. And I think he'll be a strong advocate out in that ward. We also have Tom Clote, who brings experience from the Board of Education.
Right.
And and has a wonderful background in that regard, and I know that he'll bring a strong voice. So yeah, we have new council members, and perspectives are different, and there are strong opinions, and so if we can figure out how to not kill each other and interact properly, we should have a lot of fun.
Okay. The street projects, where are we?
Street projects, 5 years ago, not quite 5 years ago, but about 4.5 years ago, citizens of Norman voted $9 million in street improvements. Due to the timing of federal dollars being available through the state and hard work by staff, we ended up qualifying for a considerable amount of matching dollars, which turned that into $20 million. Well, we had promised the voters to have all these projects done in 5 years when there was $9 million. Well, it got to be $20 million, and so we grew a lot of detour signs all around town all at once. And everybody said, well, why do we have to do this all at once? Well, the reason was that we did such a good job that we had over twice as much money to spend as we thought we were going to have. But we promised that we would get these projects done in 5 years, and we're still on track to do that. There are 11 projects in that proposal. I cut the ribbon out on East Lindsay Street yesterday to open a widening project to widen that street to 4 lanes. on Monday. And so we have 2 projects left. We finished 9. There are 2 left. The 2 that are left will, if they're not finished absolutely on the day of 5 years, they'll be real close to.
So the inconveniences have been worth it?
Yes, I have a nameplate on my office at City Hall, and they call me Dr. Detour down there, and I'll get to take that sign off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What is coming up? I mean, what's next? You got the streets fixed. Now what?
The next big, well, we've kind of done, well, we've done a lot of things in 11 years I've been down there, but 2 most recent things are the streets, and then we also passed a $5 million fresh water bond issue to drill 10 wells and a new water tower, and we're in the process of doing that. The next capital project that will be a challenge for us, and it's going to be a big one, is going to be wastewater treatment. There are 2 reasons why we have to do that. One is continuing to comply with ever more difficult EPA standards of what we can emit into the South Canadian River, which is more expensive all the time. Mm-hmm. And the other one is that Norman continues to grow, and we're at about 87% of our capacity that we treat out there now. So we're gonna be faced next capital challenge that we will have will be wastewater treatment.
Okay, something like the museum now that they're currently building at OU, how will that impact Norman?
The city government, it impacts it because we have a responsibility for streets and so forth, and something's going to need to be done with Timberdale and with Chautauqua. Chautauqua needs to be 4-lane and much improved from Highway 9 to that museum. That project, however, was not very high on the university's list, and it was not very high on the city of Norman's list before that museum got built. Mm-hmm. Also was not very high on the state of Oklahoma's list. So there's a lot, and we don't have money, none of us had money planned to do that. That kind of a project could possibly qualify for industrial access types of state money. If that's the case, I think we would need to have the support of the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the governor to do that. So President Boren and I and our legislators are in the process of doing that. But anything nice like that happens does create demands. Another example would be the parking garage beside the Catholic Music Center, which means that we had to spend $1.5 million improving the intersection of Boyd and Elm. Fortunately, over $1 million of those were federal dollars. So that turned out nice. But anytime you do something, even though it's nice, it creates demands of a different type.
Okay, and then on the other side, you get things like, I think it was the baseball tournament that we had last year, or the soccer tournaments, or what have you. How do those impact Norman?
Oh, well, in a very positive way. From 2 standpoints, to the positive side, it's great. It's great for our kids. I mean, we have really strong recreational programs that zillions of our kids participate in. We're really lucky to have that. So the primary focus of all of those programs are recreational programs for our kids. The secondary part of that, however, is an economic development part of that. If you have those big tournaments, then lots of people come to Norman, and it's tourist dollars, quite frankly. And tourist dollars are very desirable in a number of ways. You know, they come to town, they spend their money, and they leave. You don't have to educate their kids, you don't have to treat their water, you don't have to do a lot of things. And so those are sales tax dollars that are very important. But I want to be sure that everybody understands that economic development part of Griffin or Reeves or those parks is very secondary to the function that they're designed to do, and that is to provide recreation for our kids and adults, for that matter.
But to get those kinds of things, you still have to do the capital improvements.
Yes,
the streets
and about 3 years ago, we improved both Reeves and Griffin Park to the tune, I think, of about $1.2 million. The citizens voted a bond issue. That's one of the many that they've been good to pass. To do that, and because we made those improvements, then every time you do that, you attract more and more of those tournaments.
Yeah, but you wonder about the hotels going up, and you think about Norman as a city, and can they support those kinds of things?
I don't know the answer to that. I hope the answer is yes for the restaurants, yes for the hotels, and yes for all of the businesses that are currently locating on Interstate 35. I think really what drives those investments are investment philosophies of very large corporations at a national level. And they do, in a lot more sophisticated way, what we were talking about earlier. They count cars, they count rooftops. They have a way to analyze these things. Well, I think then when they all decide as a group that this is a spot, then it's just a race to get there. I don't know, and there surely are too many, but I don't pretend to know that.
So far, they're doing okay.
So far, it's okay.
Okay, we'll be back in just a moment with two students from Central Mid-High. We're back with our two student guests, Michael Hobson and Brianna Parker. And I think, Michael, you're going first, is that correct? Okay.
My first question is, do you like being mayor, and what are the responsibilities of being mayor?
Well, I've been a council member 6 years and mayor 5, and so I'm in my 6th year of being mayor. That's going to add up to 12 years. It's going to be hard for me to tell you that I don't enjoy it, or why would I have stayed around that long? I do enjoy it. It is a lot of fun. There are a lot of rewards from the standpoint of hopefully positive things that you get done, contributions that you're able to make, some sort of leadership you're able to provide, and you feel good about that. A lot of fun things to do and a lot of nice people to meet. So, yeah, I do enjoy it. And the second part was what, Michael?
The responsibilities of being
the
mayor.
responsibilities. This is two forms of city government. Strong mayor form, in which the mayor is a highly paid executive who on a daily basis runs the city, and all the employees of the city would work for me. That's not the type we have. We have the form called city manager form. And the city manager is the highly paid executive who on a daily basis all the people that work for the city work for him. And the mayor is a near volunteer position that is sort of the chairman of the board, sort of a position. So I am the chairman of the board, in this case the city council. That means that all of the legislation, if you will, that's passed, all the laws, all the ordinances, all the policies that govern this city are passed by the city council. The second part is that the city council has only one employee, and that's the city manager. All the other employees in the city work for the city manager, and the city manager works for us. So we hire and fire the city manager. We pass all the laws that govern the city, if you will, and the policies. And the third thing is, which is probably the killer, we approve the budget. So when the budget comes before us and we're going to spend tax dollars in this way or that way or this way or that way, the body that decides how we're going to spend those dollars is the city council.
Okay.
What are some of your goals or projects for Norman?
We've had so many positive years in the last 4 or 5 years. And I guess we can call capital improvements and an improved economy accomplishments. But I've grown to have an important, I think, sense of what the council needs to determine that Norman's supposed to look like. Now, recently, over the past 2 or 3 years, Norman has passed Lawton as Oklahoma's 3rd largest city. And there's a lot of growth in Norman. But growth shouldn't be our goal. It's an important part of what's happening in Norman. There are 195 square miles in Norman, and it's a very attractive community. We're going to grow, and we need to have a healthy economy. But our goal is not growth. Our goal is to have the best community that we know how to have. Our goal should be to compare ourselves with really nice places, not just in this state, but in this country, and achieve things that represent a high quality of life for the people who live here. We want to compare ourselves not necessarily with local communities there are some really fine local communities, but not limit our perspective to that, but compare ourselves to Madison, Wisconsin, or Palo Alto, California, or communities that are viewed to do a really good job and have gorgeous communities that are beautiful. So the challenge is that City Council and the mayor provide leadership that takes this community in a direction of planned growth, not for growth's sake, but to defend and protect and hopefully encourage the quality of life that we all enjoy here. That's my goal. That's what I want to do.
Do you think Norman needs 2 hospitals?
It's a tough question to answer. I'll kind of do a couple of the issues of that for you if you're interested. Of course, that's a current issue. We have, our situation that we have now is that we have a viable, healthy community hospital. It's really a regional hospital. 40% of the patients they serve are not from Norman, so it's really a regional hospital. Healthy means 2 things to me. 1, they provide a very high quality of health care. 2 is they're self-supporting. Not all hospitals are self-supporting. In fact, a minority of hospitals are self-supporting. A comparison would be the University of Oklahoma Teaching Hospital in Oklahoma City, which costs you state tax dollars of $40 million a year to operate it. Our hospital doesn't do that. Communities our size often have hospitals that cost you tax dollars. We don't have that. So we have a healthy community hospital, 1 providing very high quality of care, 2 is it's financially successful. If we were in a situation where we had a financial disaster at the hospital, it would be a situation where perhaps we might be more prone to want to encourage another hospital that was a for-profit hospital. Across the country, communities about our size that have healthy community hospitals generally try to defend against that. The 2 issues here, one's a for-profit and one's a not-for-profit. The for-profit, let's say, represents, the advantages would be a competitive atmosphere and competition lowers cost, and medical costs are too high. So you say, okay, I want a second hospital because there will be competition between these 2 hospitals. That competition will drive the cost of health care down, and so a second hospital is good. I think that there are a couple problems with that. One is Columbia does not represent real competition. Columbia is an enormous national corporation that could buy our entire community and sell it and not even miss the money. To think that a relatively small community hospital can compete with an enormous corporation, that isn't competition. That's a mismatch. So you want to think that Columbia and the community hospital are going to create competition. I would contend that that's not a fair playing field. If it's not, but I would agree that our single community hospital is not competition either. But the opposite, in my view, does not represent fair competition. The other side of the equation is if we compete and the for-profit hospital takes the for-profit patients and only leaves the indigent patients, or takes most of the for-profit patients and leaves most of the indigent patients to Norman Regional Hospital, pretty soon, instead of our hospital, 2 things will happen to our hospital. One is they no longer will cash flow. They no longer will make enough money to support the hospital, so your city government is going to take your tax dollars from you to subsidize that hospital. 2 is, since they're not making any money anymore, instead of being able to expand and grow and offer more complicated and more expensive services like cancer treatment and that sort of thing, there won't be any money for them to grow and expand anymore, so the citizens of Norman will then be forced to go to Oklahoma City to get the higher level types of treatments. And so I think that there's potential damage for our hospital. Now, the broader question of what health care is going to look like in 20 years from now, Columbia can't tell you, I can't tell you, no one at the hospital can tell you. I don't know. I mean, it's the most dynamic thing I think that's happening in the country right now is health care. So I don't know, I don't pretend to know what it's going to look like in 20 years. But I think those are the issues and why the City Council was concerned about having a second hospital. What we passed at City Hall was a process to do called a certificate of need. It does not prohibit a second hospital. All that says is we want to do a study that says if you're going to put a second hospital in Norman, Is it going to be detrimental to our current hospital? Do we really need a second hospital? And there's a cost to that. But it does not prohibit Columbia or any other hospital from coming to Norman. All it says is we put in place a process where we evaluate whether that's a good or bad thing to do. And if you want to go through the process, and the process says it's a good thing to do, we'll build a second hospital.
What do you think Norman needs to do to make this a better city?
The easy thing, of course, to say is plan better. But we just did about a 2-year study with lots of citizens and consultants and so forth, and we've just done a master plan, if you will, a comp plan, a 2020 plan for Norman to take us to the year 2020. So I think that's the primary thing, planning. You know, and I think the second thing that you have to remember is you have to have a viable economy. I mean, you have to have the city government or the school system or the county government. I mean, you have to have enough money to build the streets and the roads and the parks and the things that are happening. So, I mean, I think you need to plan well so the growth, Norman's going to have growth. It needs to be controlled and planned. 2 is you have to remember that the economy has to be good enough to fix the potholes, hire the policemen, to hire the parks directors, and to do the functions that are the city government's responsibility, so that it can deliver its part of the quality of life, so that when you flush your John, the sewer works. When you turn your water tap on, you get water. When you need a policeman, he's there. When you need a fire truck, it's there. If you want to go play soccer, you have a Griffin Park. If you want to play baseball, you have a Reeves Park. So the second part, I would say, is the government, I think, has a role to play in ensuring that the economy stays as healthy as we can.
What has been the city's position on expansion and improvements at the fairground?
The fairgrounds it's a county activity. It's a county fairground, so it's not a municipal fairgrounds. I think that the city, the city doesn't have a direct role. I would, let me just speak about my own personal views.
Okay.
My own personal views, and I've lived here a long time, is that I think there's a need for improvement in the fairgrounds. Now, apparently the types of plans that have been developed by the fair board, and I'm not on the fair board and I don't have anything to do with that, but just to observe that when we voted on issues that they've brought up that they failed, apparently they haven't hit on the right way, the right size, the right thing to do, because the voters haven't voted for it yet. So the board and the county commissioners have to figure out the proper mission that the people in Cleveland County will support. Now, when that happens, the city's going to do everything that we can to support that. If we have to help build some roads or streets or improvements or change some zoning or whatever our part of that might be, we'll certainly support that in any way we can.
Okay. Got a quick one?
What do you think are some of Norman's best qualities?
Oh, the university's the best one. I mean, there's no getting around that. All college towns have that benefit, not just Norman. But when you have a university, you have an incredible asset to work with. And so that is clearly the one thing. I think the other things are, we are close enough to a metro area to be somewhat urban, but far enough away to not feel like you're living in downtown Oklahoma City. So you still get, and I'm really anxious to defend that small town feeling that when you're from Norman, you don't feel like you're from Oklahoma City metro area. You feel like you're from Norman, and people want to be part of Norman. They volunteer. They want to defend with pride the idea that I'm from Norman. I'm not from some ambiguous place somewhere else. So there's a lot of community pride in Norman. So the university, the community pride, volunteers, lots of talented people, and you put a lot of talented people together in a community, and they usually get fairly good things done, and I think that's what happens in Norman.
We want to thank you very much for being with us. We're out of time, unfortunately, but it's good to have you,
Thank you, Sandy.
and good luck to you. And
Thank
hopefully
you.
we'll talk to you again next year.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next week with another Capital Ideas.